Every decade, there is a progress. Aircraft manufacturers, airport terminals, also processes of service, let's say with aircraft operators and so on. So in that sense, that explains why I chose aviation to help aviation, because I believe in this industry. The people who work in aviation, they feel care for people, and there are things that we can, of course, hold them accountable for. But the care, the idea is that aviation is a business of freedom. We want to make people travel, see other cultures. We want the businesses to flourish. It's there. If somebody joins aviation industry, they're romantic at heart.
You're listening to the Happy Space podcast, where we achieve performance through inclusive design. Today, we're talking about making learning about accessibility more accessible with Dr. Ivan Berazhny. Think back to your childhood. Did you experience that people have different capabilities, that they experience a variety of barriers? How about as an adolescent, a young adult, as a student, or even as an employee? Our knowledge of accessibility is amassed in a really haphazard way as we learn through experience, or as my next guest will tell you, through suffering. In many cases, piecing together a fuller understanding of the different challenges others face by age 40 or 50. What if, instead, thinking about accessibility became a way of life that we learned as youngsters? After speaking for some time with Dr. Ivan Berazhny, based in Finland, a country known for its respect for education and recognized by the World Economic Forum as having the best education system in the world, and with a cultural policy based on the fundamental right to participate in the arts and culture, recognized by the UN Declaration of Human Rights and guaranteed by the Finnish Constitution. It is no surprise that Dr. Berazhny, a senior lecturer at Haaga-Helia University, with, among other specialties, expertise in leadership and aviation, has been deeply involved in a project to bring inclusion to aviation through INCLAVI. It's an EU-funded initiative involving beneficiary partners from 10 countries and key stakeholders in aviation, from disability rights advocates to higher and vocational educational institutions, to IATA, the International Air Transport Association, part of the UN, and ENAT, the European Network for Accessible Tourism. The mission of INCLAVI is to make air transport the leader of accessibility and disability inclusive development in the transport sector through education, training, and knowledge. What I've observed since working with the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower Program is that while there is much room to grow in aviation, with air travel connecting the world, it has a uniquely global community, often working together on shared goals. I'm so pleased that accessibility included, and I first saw this at the first UN Symposium on Accessibility in International Civil Aviation in Montreal last year, and again when invited to speak on the experiences of those with hidden disabilities at the Passenger Terminal Expo in Madrid. This is where I met Dr. Berazhny and was first introduced to his work. It is such a foundational approach to understanding and treating other humans with the respect they deserve. I couldn't wait to bring his message and his work to you. My hope is that anyone who is thinking about building a more inclusive, barrier-free culture, space, or experience will explore INCLAVI's free offering. If you're not in aviation, there is a lot to learn from the approach, and it can be carried forward to other industries. We close our discussion with a question I plan on asking all future guests. Ivan paints a poetic picture, and I hope you'll listen to the end and enjoy it just as much as I did. Ivan, welcome to Happy Space.
Thank you, Claire. Happy to be here.
Oh, that's wonderful. We met, for listeners, we met while in Madrid at the Passenger Terminal Expo, where I was introduced to your work, Ivan, and it it was so compelling what you shared and how profound your message is and when where you're focusing your work, that I wanted to bring it to Happy Space listeners, many of whom are leaders and shapers of culture, leaders of people, thinking about, inviting the best performance, whether it be students or passengers or customers or visitors. And I thought your work is going to be inviting a profound foundation setting in the world. So I wanted to open our conversation by asking you to, just for a second, help our listeners understand what your big project has been with the UN, and if you can shape what it is that you're doing, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Thank you, Claire, first of all, for your kind invitation to join your podcast. And thank you for sharing your networks with myself and, of course, my colleagues who are behind me in the project that I do. In few words, I work on accessibility and on creating a training for aviation and tourism professionals that would raise the level of awareness in the industry about all types of various conditions and disabilities that exist and assistance requirements for the travelers or by the travelers. And this training will be offered for free, and it is funded by European Union, European Commission, and includes a very large consortium of organizations. So I am representing the coordinating university, Haaga-Helia University of Applied Sciences, Finland. Yes, European Commission is a wonderful source of funding. And yes, quite a lot of wonderful initiatives get supported in EU. Yet it's very competitive, and the work that we do right now with the partners on accessibility took about 5-6 years to plan. And as we were planning it and approaching the context where there are so many gaps, as you know yourself, and all the discussions we've had in Madrid and after, it really takes, as they say, a village to raise a child. So it takes a whole ecosystem approach to achieve even one incremental change. So I would say that I'm very humble, and I would divide your words of appraisal by 10 to start maybe like that, so our audiences get the realistic picture. I will tell you that we have organizations in the consortium such as International Air Transport Association, European Network for Accessible Tourism, Istanbul Grand Airport. We also have associated partners such as the State Transport Agency in Sweden, Air Baltic, which is a mid-sized carrier, European carrier in Latvia in Europe. And also Finavia, which is the Finnish operator of airports, and then few universities from Turkey, from Netherlands, from Finland. So that's, we have about 9-10 partners and few associated partners. So as you can imagine, I go around the world visiting various events, just like the expo we saw each other in Madrid. And it's my pleasure and actually, I think, responsibility to share the results of our work and to test whether there are enough organizations and stakeholders that would be interested in helping us shape up this training and help us pilot it and integrate it into the context of travel and tourism industry. That's in a nutshell. We have about 40 courses that part of this curriculum. They're completely free. And they raise the awareness of various occupational groups about all the types of disabilities, health conditions for each journey and each touch point on the journey, what to do, what not to do, what are the best practices. And we already tested some of it, and we get very good results.
That was my next question. So thank you for that fulsome understanding. And I appreciate the complexity in what you've taken on, and then how many people have been involved to begin to see whether this will resonate and then travel further. So tell me a little bit about the impact, and then I want to come back to why you chose to spend so long and so much effort in this. But tell me a little bit back about the impact now, and this must be so inspiring and give you even fuel to continue, I would imagine.
Absolutely. I'm absolutely thrilled because the impact is connected to the why, of course. And I probably will reverse your question and start with the why. In the sense, well, working in education and research and development for many decades, as I have, I see a clear gap. Education industry and the ecosystem of education does not even approach the subject of accessibility, not on the kindergarten level, not in the primary school, not in the high school, not in the colleges. You don't even have subjects of accessibility or courses or modules. Students do not get credits and study points for studying accessibility. It's not verbalized, it's not formulated, it's not put out there. So even the job descriptions very rarely list accessibility as a competence. And when you apply for jobs and there are recruitment processes, and nobody, gives extra value to accessibility. It's not asked specifically for many occupations in travel and tourism. And the educational industry does not even, correspond to the need of teaching accessibility to variously aged learners.
Mm-hmm.
That has always been sort of on my mind and my colleagues as well, sort of how do we change? And we need to create educational projects. When people join the industry, the banking industry, insurance industry, travel and tourism, they joined with zero awareness very often because our society practices this ghetto approach. Accessibility is something that you will learn yourself once you reach 40, 50, and that age through experiences, through suffering, through caring for your loved ones, through breaking the boundaries and exploring and helping people. I think that's wrong, plainly wrong. I think we should go all the way down to the kindergarten system and include discussions about accessibility, make environments natural towards learning about accessibility and assistance that may be needed by people with different conditions. So that is the why. And I think it hit the spot, our application, when we had academia, the industry, and then associations, disability community coming together and say, we want to create an educational product that will fill this gap, that will create training that can be used in universities for free, and the students can use it and recognize it as a prior learning and speed up their graduation by listing in the curriculum. We have accessibility subjects that are qualified by European Union, by the Commission, by ministries of education, and you can get the study points. And for the continuous professional development of the industry, airlines, airports, ground handlers, and so on, you could get mini-size modules that employees can use as self-development, professional development on the go, on the ground. So those gaps will be closed, and the impact, only in Istanbul Grande Airport, which is rather relatively new terminal, was opened in 2019, but it employs thousands of employees. At least for the piloting, we have about 4,000 employees that will be taking different modules. So you have a huge workforce in Turkey, which is a global hub, 80 million passengers in 2024. You would get employee standardized training, and the impact will be there. I think it will relieve the aviation academies and the schools in aviation management and other training facilities from the need to design accessibility training on their own. It's expensive to design a curriculum, to give new materials and provide a learning platform. It's very expensive. And that's one of the barriers on the way towards more awareness. The training is just not available, too expensive, or it takes too much time to design it, and so on. So this is the why of the project, and then the impact. We hope, at least on the piloting level, that we will achieve 800 learners and collect the feedback. And then we also hope that because the European Commission requires the project to be maintained at least for 3 years after the funding is completed or runs out. So we're committed to follow up the project and make updates in the training materials if legislation changes or some processes change. So in that sense, we were looking forward long term the platform is owned by my university. It's going to be valid, supported technically, and I think the impact will be cumulative as we progress. The world already is around about this INCLAVI. We've presented it at various events, and hopefully also in terms of your jurisdiction area, Canada.
Yeah.
We have our International Air Transport Association that has headquarters in Montreal, so I think they might at some point also bring it to Canada because they're one of the partners.
Oh, that's refreshing and exciting to hear about. I really appreciate hearing the starting point. Is the starting point really Istanbul and the 4,000? You mentioned 4,000 employees there.
Could be no. I think they could be taking it. There are many more employees, and of course, when you think of employees of the airport, they're also subcontractors. So the ecosystem of labor is much higher. What I do know, my Turkish colleagues will translate some of the modules in the Turkish language, so that also will be more impactful because many more employees will be able to get access. English is paramount, but in many jurisdiction areas, if you think people on the ground working, sometimes English is not on the level that could allow full immersion into the training material. So it's important to localize and translate.
Wow. Yeah, you'll love a conversation I had with Heather Hansen, who's studying language and accents and the use of English. And she has a TED Talk talking about the fact that most English is broken English. Most English spoken in the world is broken English. So the majority of English is bad English, is what she says, right?
And I always say that English has to become accessible. In the sense, we need to use English that is user-friendly, listener-friendly. Yeah. And I always, it's a joy that I could, start flowering up myself in terms of English with you, right? And with the listeners who are, I suppose, most of them could be native speakers. But then again, it's very important to try various Englishes and be a very good translator, shifting between the registers and the styles in English language. It's also part of accessibility. Yeah. When we teach accessible communication, we do teach about interfaces and about the clear, concise, very well measured English language in writing and in speech.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I'm really curious as we think about aviation and accessibility, which has been the focus of this, although I can see a need to repeat this in many industries with specialization around it. Can you give me a little idea of how you've thought of the curriculum and how it relates to, as you mentioned, for example, in airports, there are numerous subcontractors. And through my work with hidden disabilities, the Sunflower program, I see a lot, and I'm in conversation now with airports and starting to understand that. Can you give me a little bit of an idea of your understanding and how you designed the contents of a curriculum around accessibility for a specific industry?
Today's episode of the Happy Space podcast is sponsored by ClareKumar.com. With sensitivity, curiosity, and courage, I serve 3 groups asking the tough questions that lead to meaningful answers. Number 1, I coach ambitious leaders to design for well-being and achieve next-level work-life integration. Number 2, I mic drop thought bombs, that's bombs as in BALMS, in keynotes and workshops, helping organizations achieve the business imperative that is inclusivity. And 3, I collaborate with brands concerned with respect for well-being on product design, marketing, and PR. If any of this piqued your interest, come find me at ClareKumar.com. I'd love to speak with you. Designing inclusive performance together will lead to the richest results.
Yeah. Well, aviation industry is a fascinating industry. It's been always on our minds, I think, as we have lived. Aviation is a very old concept. Even Leonardo da Vinci was purchasing birds on the market in Florence and letting them go, studying how they fly. We go to Icarus and, in ancient Greece. And so on. So Marie Antoinette was observing the French queen who was beheaded, the flying balloons and, so there was always this dream, you want to fly, and avia means bird and let. And so I think people were always fascinated. Why this element above our heads, right? The sky. and that's where we place the heaven, right? And so. And you see there are so many other animals, birds, bats that they can just call. So I do think modern times show the same fascination with aviation, and I'm fascinated by aviation. I always get a thrill when I take off in the flight. I don't know why. I feel that even if I know the physics and the engineering and the thrust and all the dynamics, I feel that we as humanity, we are amazing. We can go so far with what we have, our fragile bodies, and we can, overcome elements and turbulence and snow and so on. So I think that's one of the reasons why I've always looked at aviation. But then also on the other hand, aviation has been demonized a lot, and in my opinion, quite unfairly, because it's almost like an entertainment for us. We fall out, watch the news, whether there is an incident, right? There was this aircraft with this aircraft operator hitting severe turbulence, So in that sense, I feel with accessibility as it evolves in a society, aviation has been picked out quite a lot. What I see as an aviation in the past professional and also a teacher of the subjects in aviation, that aviation has done the homework rather well on many things. For example, in environmental studies, no other industry has slashed the carbon footprint for the past few decades in terms of passenger per kilometer as much as aviation has done. Neither boat industry, neither car, bus, transport. So again, but aviation has been very much demonized and put. Of course, they need to do better. Of course. But the public loves to go after aviation. It's dramatic. It's sort of something that resonates through the media, and people read and comment. If somebody would pick up the taxi company and start, finding faults, or all the let's say transfer industry and so on. Not as fascinating. So I noticed that there are many best practices in aviation on accessibility that are very well combined with safety. So the safety requirements in aviation are very high. So it's a paramount requirement. It has to be safety, security control. If you walk into many other things, like, go to metro, right? Or you take any other transport, in Europe, for instance, when you take a boat, you go from Helsinki to Stockholm, Finland, Sweden. There is no security check in many other things. Aviation has our passport data. We give our health data to aviation. We comply with all the requirements, not carrying this, not carrying that. It's very limited. And governments control aviation and tax aviation a lot. So when you get to the inside of the industry, you start thinking, wow, the guys there, they have done a fantastic job in terms of making this industry, which is vital for our economy, which is vital for our mental health, connecting people, allowing us to go travel. They have made almost the impossible. They keep the technology up, they're progressing, and they comply with all the stricter and stricter legislation. And at the same time, they push the boundaries of accessibility, following what the society wants. Not perfectly, but still going with the progress. Every decade, there is a progress. Aircraft manufacturers, airport terminals, also processes of service, let's say, with aircraft operators and so on. So in that sense, that explains why I chose aviation to help aviation, because I believe in this industry. The people who work in aviation, they feel care for people. And there are things that we can, of course, hold them accountable for, but the care, the idea is that, aviation is a business of freedom. We want to make people travel, see other cultures. We want the businesses to flourish. It's there. If somebody joins aviation industry, they're romantic at heart. They are. So I hope that explains a little bit why we go there. And then now the technical part of your question, the subconstructors and so on, how to plan the curriculum. There are many stakeholders. And of course, everybody pushes the blanket of themselves, whether this project should be for airports or whether airlines should grab the initiative, so on. When we build the consortium, we pushed the industry a little bit aside. And we thought, let's start with our patient or with our passenger, with a person, with an individual. And we go door to door. We have a journey, right? And a passenger doesn't care which stakeholder is responsible for what, or which subcontractor. So we have this timeline of a journey, a path, and we have all the possible touch points. Let's say the first touch point, we thought it's not starting at the airport, it's a dream, it's an idea, planning a journey, getting inspired, getting the ideas, seeking for information, verifying things. And for a person with a disability, that's a very important point, right? Access to a reliable, verifiable information that would allow to maximize the chance of having a safe, dignified, and comfortable journey. So planning is extremely important. And of course, once it's planning, then actually the purchasing, the sales, the booking, what system would you have, payment solutions, everything has to be accessible as well, right? So there are a lot of stages that a person with disability or group of disabled people or even a company person would go through before even travel begins from home towards the airport.
Yep.
So we looked into that and we said, wow, there are a lot of subcontractors there. There are a lot of issues coming, website accessibility and Then after we measured those touch points, we went towards, more clear segments that are normally associated with aviation. So arriving at the terminal, proceeding through the terminal, getting towards the security check, passing the security check, passport control. Then we go to the air side and we have different, we did observe the processes on a very minute level because you want to have a bathroom in the airport terminal, you want to go shopping, you want to you want to go to the restaurant, to other services, and then there is a time at the gate, then you do the boarding, then once you're in the aircraft, you do the nesting, right? All of it, placing luggage. And then of course there is all the segment for the flight. You have the flight entertainment, you have the safety announcement, you have the bathroom experience in the aircraft, you have the meals, you have various other announcements, in-flight entertainment, then you have the preparation for the landing, then after the landing, you have deboard, disembarkation, various things are happening. Then you need to pick up your mobility aids or your luggage. Then you exit the terminal. You might go through the customs clearance, right? You might go through the passport control. So it's like very minute detail, And then what we added post travel, that you also need to report things. Also, you need to have channels for raising issues, not just complaints, but also offering suggestions or maybe compliments for that matter. And in a sense that we have a full timeline of a journey with touch points. And that was our starting point to understand that in our curriculum, we want to have a comprehensive, that we have 40 modules. Some of them would be fundamental, general for all, but we will cover all of those touch points. And we will show for different occupational groups what are the best practices at each point by different stakeholders in the world, what usually the relevant agents or relevant employees supposed to do, supposed to avoid, and how to ensure that your contribution, this touch point, would contribute in a just, fair way, that you would actually act and work with awareness of all possible disabilities and how to assist in the right way. That was the logic, the kind of matrix, touch points, types of disabilities. Then, of course, we had to exclude a lot of things because it grows very well, and we talked to various stakeholders, and we created learning paths. So, for instance, for an airport employee, maybe modules from, let's say, 21 until 29 would be relevant. Maybe for a flight attendant, modules 33 to 37 would be relevant. Maybe for the check-in agent, modules from 15 until 21, So we create learning paths and we label them and we suggest. Although we don't force it, we sort of hope that employees from different occupational groups will start learning about other segments. I mean, it's important that the cabin crew would know what happens on the ground and the other way around.
Yeah, there would be an innate curiosity to understand what happens before.
Exactly, what happens to the person once they park them at the gate. How would they proceed, and what type of support will be offered, and what happens with them on the flight, let's say.
Yeah, it's given me this sort of thinking just through the overall hierarchy has given me an appreciation of why it could take so long to build this, never mind pulling the support and the relationships of everyone, but just even to get the understanding to know what you want to build. And it also makes me think, to take this kind of thinking and take it to another business. You've got a framework that works, but all that depth and nuance of understanding means starting again and going through that whole journey.
And remaining very humble, because I think all of us in the industry, in the consortium and academic partners, we're learning every day, and we never assume anything to be, it's not as if you read an academic article and you think, oh, that's the truth, right? I think we co-create truth, and we look into the real life, and we have an extensive round of interviews and focus groups with the disability community, wanted to understand the situation, what the needs and how do they see the training, what do they think should the awareness and so on. And of course, then we go to the industry and have interviews and focus groups. So there was a lot of research done in the beginning, together with literature review. We created a set of these modules, as I explained, touch points. We created learning objectives. We tried to do it in a very sound pedagogical way. So learning objectives are matching the assessment component at the end of each course. Mm-hmm. And so we try to use very, very specific action verbs, sort of not just to understand, but like to describe. The learner will be able to measure, identify, and then. So we try to keep it very concrete, because there is a lot of awareness training that stops short from achieving any meaningful learning outcomes. Yeah. I would say the learner is often able to grasp the importance, but then it never translates into actual skills and competences. So we try to find a way to position the learner, sort of to empower them, to enable them, and give them resources and the basic vocabulary, the basic concepts, and the basic processes to be explained in a clear way. And then an organization such as Istanbul Airport or Munich Airport Academy or the Swedish transport agency, Swedish Airports, they would be able to integrate our curriculum into their existing systems, like they can mix and plug in. Yep. And support our automated training with classes, with consultations, with mentorship, and because our training is just initial block, we are very humble. Even if we cover all these topics on some level, awareness more, we hope that it will be a basis and everybody can use the training. You can recycle it if you wish, change the contents if you wish, make a PowerPoint out of the modules that you have, whatever serves your purpose, because it's free, it's paid by European taxpayers, and the idea is that somebody takes it further and develops classes, develops why not podcasts, develops whatever around it, what helps to raise the awareness across various occupational groups, so that the service that we get would be an informed service, a service based on not just an empathy, but a clear understanding of accessibility.
Your mentioning that it's a responsibility echoes my conversation with Kay Sargent, who's the principal, she's a thought leader in the HOK organization around neuro-inclusive workplace design and more. And they've done a significant amount of research. And she said it's our responsibility to share this because it deserves to be understood. And so it's that same spirit of sharing insight and learning and hoping there's an appetite. And then I guess being, providing that knowledge as a conduit for that connection. I always talk about being a conduit for compassion. And you mentioned being humble and staying curious. And I think that's what I'm hoping we sort of move to more collectively in society, is to be able to park that very convenient bias formation that helps us move through life fairly quickly, to be able to ask those questions.
I'll tell you more. Yes, we're humble and curious, and it's free. But European Union is a great example of giving this funding framework. It actually requires, it pushes us to sharing like that. It does require the funding that you get the funding only if you can prove that there will be impact and there will be big dissemination, and then there will be real change on the ground, and how to measure that they ask in advance. Then also the many organizations, they would like to create a commercial product from the project that they're working.
Mm-hmm.
And fantastic the condition in the funding that no commercial products by our partners should be kind of launched in the consortium.
Mm.
You can package the modules with something else in your programs and you offer, but itself, this content, you cannot sell or offer as a commercial. It has to be free and available to everybody in the world.
Wow,
So,
I like these design constraints.
yeah, that's beautiful, and I think a lot of energy and effort goes away into thinking, how can I turn accessibility into a money-making machine? And I think if that's the motivation to come forward, I think that is there's dissonance in that.
Yeah.
I would think that if the taxpayers' money is already provided, so you just put it to the good cause and you work and deliver as best as you can.
Yeah.
And then, of course, disability community and the industry, they can package it, modify, put forward. And if some spin-offs exist, fine. But you as a consortium, you as a generator of this knowledge, you should not, I believe, in my opinion. So I never was like after the commercial interest in that sense, because the funding framework set it up like that.
Yeah, no, it's designed to have this outcome. So I love that. I am wondering, as listeners of Happy Space are part aviation for sure. There are people in that sector, but many sectors beyond. Is there an element to what you've created that you would say, come and have a look? Come and have a look at these modules. This would be relevant for anyone in terms of accessibility.
Well, I think one of the good modules, fundamental modules, I would say, accessibility terminology. When we started looking at all the contents materials that goes around, we thought, we need to go back to the basics, because the word even accessibility has been so much abused and people understand it in so many ways. And there are so many terms that are used as synonyms, but in fact, they are not synonyms. So how do you even understand the word accessibility? Well, it starts from access. So if you study accessibility, that means you study the process of understanding barriers that prevent access, right? And so your job is then to analyze the barriers and remove them, or additionally, to set up society in a way that these barriers are not created in the first place. So that's the dimension of the term accessibility. Then you have another word, disability, and you need to actually show that disability as a status in many jurisdiction areas, how would you be labeled as disabled or disability? It's a very controversial term. You have temporary injuries, you have people who become disabled, let's say, or given medical certificates. Disability, if you look legally, it's a status that gives you benefits because of a certain condition. So you're marked there, right? Free parking, or maybe and other things, right? Social support. So you have various aspects to terms, and you start understanding, wow, when you take an approach like that you need to really go deep and go to the basics, you sort of you improve your view of the world and think, okay, I will almost become like a lawyer or a linguist, and I will know exactly where things belong, right, in the taxonomy of things. But it was beautiful, and we tried to put some of it into our accessibility terminology, and we hope our learners, because when you start producing content, what you realize when you produce the first lesson, second lesson, you start confusing your learners, because there's so many interchangeable terms, and you think if you didn't do homework yourself on the terminology. How dare I approach the fresh learners of the subject and let's say create confusion or maintain the confusion? So that I think is useful. Or let's say compare towards inclusion and accessibility, right? So if I explain to you accessibility is about barriers, something prevents access resources or to various processes and so on,
Mm-hmm.
then inclusion is creating a culture environment where, it's not about accessibility. It's about welcoming, inviting that diversity is there. And then it's not just about disabilities. It's more about diversity of people. So we are not, with inclusion, we are not only talking about physical dimension, or sensory or cognitive. We talk about,
It implies that
implies, yes,
accessibility is considered if you're going to talk about inclusion.
Accessibility is the way towards inclusion. So
Exactly.
inclusion is the goal. Accessibility, it's your method, and accessibility is a much more technical term that goes with that. And of course, in our everyday communication, where we don't have to be scientific or linguistic, we can use them interchangeable. We all agree that we understand what we mean. But here in the learning materials, I think we took an extra effort to become a little bit more systematic. How we size it.
Yeah. No, I think it's an important conversation, because even a conversation I see repeatedly now around neurodivergency and neurodiversity is a misunderstanding of the term diverse. And so I'm neurodiverse isn't something you can say. I'm an example of neurodiversity. We're forever making an effort to catch the linguistic intention and shape people that are intending to educate. So I had a beautiful interaction on LinkedIn last week, and somebody I respect was really putting a beautiful advocacy message out. But she said, we are all neurodiverse. And several people came in and said, and she wrote a beautiful post saying, I learned, and amended it. It was great.
If you're systematic,
yeah,
and your categories are correct, and you understand what's whole, what's the part, and other things, you're more credible. Right, it's right there. You're more credible if things are organized well in your mind, and you use terms precisely for their purposes. So you gain more trust with the audience, and the impact is much stronger then.
Well, and I think even in my own learning, every time I dig into a word, it makes me think more fully about all the assumptions and the tangential meanings, and then how does that fit? So it is a really beautiful place to start. So if someone, let's come right down to some precise and practical invitations for our listeners then. If they want to find out about INCLAVI and this initiative and go all the way to finding this module on accessible language, could you give us a little guide to that? And then
I'll finish up. Yes, very easy. And I think later I can share with you there is a website, www.INCLAVI, Inclusive Aviation's abbreviation, INCLAVI.eu. That's the website. On the website, as we're building up, there are various deliverables. We have a compendium of best practices from inclusive aviation that we all put together. There are about 40 or something best practices, examples, who owns the practice, which airport, which airline, what the practice is about, and then how to implement it, also feasibility of the costs of implementing this practice. Then we have a summary of our research results there. Then we also have policy recommendations verified by IATA, International Transport Association. And so we have a few of these deliverables. And then there will be a link towards our curriculum, which is an online learning platform where you would need to, free of charge, to register an account, because we issue certificates. So it's not just a toy. We are certified by an international educational organization that's located in Brussels. So they took a look at our courses. And in fact, my colleague and I will travel to Munich on the, I think, 2nd or 3rd of June to receive the certification statement, because we applied for international accreditation for training. And they've been grilling us. And well, we kind of passed, but they gave us 3 recommendations. So we were a bit panicking, but we passed. And now we need, in the course of the next few months, to implement these recommendations. To be transparent, recommendations are strict, and they tell us, you do not have enough interactivity with your learners. How can you ensure that you learn? So we will implement a few features. And other recommendations, for instance, to make our assessment a little bit stronger. So we cannot be so kind, and we need to, ensure that the quality is there. So we got very useful tips. So I think certification will exist for 3 years. That means that we can use the global educational label from the certification organization. This organization, EFMD, it certifies university programs, master, bachelor curriculum, and so on. And we applied for it about a year ago, and we went through the process. And so every learner that takes a course in our curriculum online as a registered user, they are verified, their identity is verified. So they have to have a valid email address, they have to have a name, and the certificate will be issued with the name of the learner and then the name of the course, how many study points it gives, and then the logos of the consortium and the certification organization. So it's an official document. With this certificate, they will be able to come, let's say if they're studying somewhere in university, they say, okay, I study aviation subjects, but I took these few courses online, and they say that they qualify for, let's say, 10 hours of studies. Can I use it to replace my assignment in a similar course or something like that? So we hope for this type of logic.
That's great. Yeah. So I'm thinking of someone who's listening to this, their ears are perking up and they want to know, what kind of time commitment is it going to take to complete? Let's say you want to do the whole thing. What kind of time commitment and investment is
Well, learners are very different in terms of experience. And we, for example, I've had learners that I've tested who are already working in aviation for a long time, especially also in accessibility. So some modules for them are rather going fast because it's user-friendly environment. So they read the text, they look at the examples, then they make the multiple choice. So but if you want to look at all of the resources, additional links, and read that, it takes a little bit more time. So usually one course takes about 10 hours, but these are academic hours in terms of 45 minutes per hour. So I would think that you could clearly spend one day and get one course done.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Quite in an easy way. And
yeah.
There is a bit of reading sometimes, especially when you, let's say, study legal frameworks. There are legislations such as, let's say, Directive 1107 in European Union or EU Accessibility Act. So when you go through these positions, explaining the rights of the passengers, they're a little bit more technical, so that might take a little bit more time. But some of them, let's say, if you study something on communication or web accessibility, they go a bit faster. And I think there's a lot of common sense in what we read, because it's very hard to disagree what we have in the content, because accessibility is common sense, right?
If you're willing to stop and think beyond what's, your experiences. Absolutely.
Sometimes I feel when you write the content, or I also review the contents of other partners, it's why are we even publishing it sometimes philosophically? It's just common sense. Everything is so. If you have empathy and you love people and you want to do the best you can, it's common sense. You would do it.
Yes. We shouldn't have to sell anybody on any of this, but it's not always obvious. So that'll lead me to my final question before my final question. And I'm curious about, because my particular angle comes from, I have MS, so I have an intermittent condition that brings some disability. But my paramount curiosity is around sensory challenge. And the fact that because I was diagnosed autistic about a year ago, I've learned that I'm on the higher side of sensory sensitivity. And I'm curious if any of your work has looked at sensory sensitivity, because So I'm wondering if you can elaborate just a little bit, indulge my curiosity for a second on that piece and how you've looked at that in the airport.
Well, I will tell you first again, I'm very humble, and don't consider myself an expert on all the types of conditions that we mention in the curriculum. We definitely looked into many of these, and we take the approach that it's more about assistance requirements than pinpointing the disabilities. And every person with a disability, even if they are labeled, at least how I personally feel, they're very individual. We're very unique. Yeah. We are very, very unique. So we try to position that. So it's more about understanding and communicating what type of assistance would be indeed relevant at which stage and how it should be delivered.
Yeah.
When you capture that approach, I think we're much more humane, because labeling somebody with a diagnosis disability, it's sort of already you start grouping people. You start
100%.
putting them in the boxes. So I am a bit careful here. Okay. So once we agree that this is our approach we take, so we look into all possible assistance ways that can be, directed towards people who identify as needing assistance because of sensory abilities or sensory whatever profiles they may have. Now, in that case, of course, we bring, let's say, sunflower, lanyard, and other things. But I believe, and we will look at the thing, it's a bit even, if you allow me, misleading somehow. From the passenger side, you put a lanyard here, and already you kind of expect to rely that would solve the issue. It doesn't. It only opens the Pandora box, right?
Or the curiosity.
Or the curiosity. And I think, yes, it's recognizable. And even in our partner Istanbul Grand Airport, we use it and so on. But what we found is that it may create a false sense of security for passengers. And we were looking at it and thinking, no, we cannot just teach about the sunflower lanyard and be happy with it. No, you have to go a bit further, try to think what happens then, what is the need? Because in many ways, sunflower is also grouping us all together into the sunflower family. And then what? So there still needs to be a system where things are communicated in a reliable, specific, precise way. And that communication doesn't get lost on the way from one touch point to another. So just printing out lanyards and putting them on, it's a very important step and going forward, but we also want to teach about what happens next and how we improve the systems. So when it comes to neurodiversity, or let's say autism in that particular, we also claim that everything is a spectrum. Everything is a spectrum, and it's always for staff, it's important to learn more. So any training we take, it's important to be kind of T-shaped, right? You're a generalist on autism, but also you need to go a little bit deeper, let's say. So we offer only a certain amount of depth and say where you can learn more. I right now reviewing a module that it's not published yet, written by colleagues from Turkey on cognitive disabilities and listing. And I'm not very, let's say, sure if we're ready yet. So it will take a few weeks and months, I think, because we of course, we listed a lot of bullet points, and all the conditions. But for the learner, when we test it a little bit, it's very confusing. There's so many, so diversity is so wide, and there's such a, how to say it, variety and such complexity in how you put them together. I don't know if I can bring the metaphor of cancer studies. When we look at different cancer, they're so wide apart from each other, like spider and zebra, completely. So here, and that's why I become a bit humble, and I think, okay, what we need to raise in the aviation professionals and students of aviation or travel and tourism topics, subjects, that there is so much to know and to learn. This is a starting point, and I myself, I have two students who are now working on various theses. And the thesis, one, for example, my colleague works on the thesis of autism, for instance. So to properly explain the, let's say, the relevance of autism in creating a passenger profile, you would need to do a proper scientific work. So I think
even then,
yeah. And I think we're only in the beginning of creating these studies and going forward and really merging the making it interdisciplinary, because you want to study travel and tourism from the autistic perspective. So this hasn't done before. So I humbly say that even if we look at our curriculum and we list, and even if we provide best practices, let's say, this is what happens in this airport if there is this situation, and this is what you could follow the process. It's not enough. And I would never say that the curriculum that I work towards is very satisfactory. I would be very wrong. So I cannot sincerely say that. But it's a good initial step. And I think that if you have an airline employee that at least has a grasp of what are the most, let's say, what are the most, what are the disabilities or conditions that are in the dire need of assistance, the ones that should be on the front line of learning, and they would have it as part of their professional development. And hopefully from year to year, that would, as they stay in the industry, that would deepen the experience. INCLAVI is just the building block, hopefully number one, and then they proceed. So that's the impact we were looking for.
Yeah.
And then to mention on autism as the client, I think what I've seen, and it's a very rewarding observation, that we broke the ice. I think the passengers themselves, many people, my students, it's fantastic that you could accept autism as a beautiful word. It's nothing to be even pointing out, right? It's like, okay, you have long hair and you are autistic, right? Or it's and we have also at least in Finland an understanding that somebody would say, well, my father, I have to do this right now because my father is autistic, right? So the way we celebrate his birthday is this. Or somebody say, well, my superior, my boss, has some degree of autism. That's why I need to prepare differently for my developmental discussion. And this is and this kind of comments become everyday normal.
Yeah.
So in that sense, that's very good. It wasn't like that a few years ago.
Yeah, there's a big evolution in the understanding and the common understanding of what it is. I think that we're still on a curve there.
Yeah. Right? Of course.
So it's fascinating. It's fascinating to look at that. This has been a riveting conversation for me, and I hope for our listeners as well. I want to thank you for everything you've shared there, and I want to close with a question for you around describing a happy space for Ivan. Tell me about your happy space. One of them, one of your favorites.
The starting word would be horizon. I think I feel enabled, or I think I go to my happy mindset when I see horizon. That to me, it means there are no barriers towards horizon. I can see it. Nothing blocks that view. And horizon is a promise. I know that it's there, and there is something else behind it. And the most joyful moments of interacting with horizon for me is in the Mediterranean when I swim. I cannot say I'm maybe the best swimmer, but I love swimming, and I dangerously sometimes go away from the shore. And imagine a hot, let's say August or July day somewhere, maybe close to Capri Island in the Gulf of Naples somewhere, or a Greek island. So when you swim away and the waves are very long and they put you a little bit to sleep, and sort of the water is right in front of your eyes and you look forward. And then there's a little bit of mist above the water, and then you see that horizon sky, and and the water become the one, and it's beautiful. And I think once I remember that I was in that. I'm looking for those spaces, and that zen. Sometimes I was floating, and the thoughts become floating as well. And then I kind of wake up and think, wow, if the wave would take me on into the other world and I would just pass away and become, part of the ocean, I wouldn't mind. So, and I think those moments, I think I could say they're pure bliss, and sort of, I felt that was my happy space. And when I'm in the moments of a very, let's say, tense everyday activities, sometimes I defenestrate. I go to the window and I just close eyes, and I go back to that horizon.
So you bring that space with you.
Yeah.
You carry it.
Important.
That's gorgeous. I think you might, well, I can't see much out my window today. It's foggy and rainy, but normally I'm seeing Lake Ontario, which is a pretty big lake.
Okay.
And I
And there
can
is a
see
horizon there, right?
there is. Well, and if it's very clear, I can see Rochester, New York on the other side, and sometimes
Oh,
Niagara Falls a little bit. And it's
wow.
many kilometers away, and I might see a little tiny little stack but I have a sense sometimes that the clouds are mountains and that but I have a terrific sense of space, water and sky where I'm living. And there is that sense of possibility and openness. But I
And
will, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Claire, in our life, and I'm sure you spend a lot of time by the computer, as all of us, right? Or talking to people, because our eyes are, well, I'm not saying that it's bad, but we are so used to having everything close to us. So our
Oh, yeah.
senses are so geared towards objects that are very close
Mhm.
that sometimes in the day I think I must reach out towards horizon, and it's a different body even positioning, and the mind and the feeling, wow, you or look in the sky. When the sky is clear, you raise your face and your eyes and you look and try to see as far as you can. It does wonderful things to your mind.
I think I want to end on that note. I love it. I'm going to think of you swimming in the Mediterranean, but keeping an eye on where shore is so you don't keep going.
Yeah, that's important though. You want to come back home, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But thank you so much for joining me in this conversation, and listeners, I hope you've enjoyed the poetry in this session and the insightfulness of Ivan. So please look up INCLAVI and bring this learning opportunity to those who will benefit from it. And everyone can take advantage of that accessibility language and those terms. So thanks again so much, Ivan.
Thank you, Claire. And I look forward to be in touch with you later as well. It's a wonderful connection that we have, I think. And this podcast, it's a beautiful initiative. And I wish you all the success in the important work that you do.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for spending time here. Check out happyspacepod.com for links to all the episodes, including on YouTube, our online community, and helpful tools for work that fits. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment on social media, or even better, drop a review. And please share with someone else who you know also deserves a happy space.